Alright, Elder of Wisdom. I managed to pick up your prescriptions, a bag of dates, and of course, Playboy. There you go.
You have done very well, young adventurer. Very well indeed. This will do nicely. And now that you have completed your tasks, I must reveal to you a matter of great importance.
Yes, O wise one. Please tell me.
You are the chosen one.
Me, the chosen one?
Indeed. You are the key to everything.
Man, what the hell?
What?
Well, why do I have to be the key to everything? Can't I just be a normal guy with an uninteresting background who does what he can to help out people and isn't preordained with greatness and decides to save the world on his own volition? That seems like a more dynamic character arc than somebody who is always meant to save the world.
No. You'll take your fantasy tropes and you'll like them.
Fine, what's my next quest?
To make more YouTube videos.
Well, now that I can do.
What are you looking at?
Horizon Zero Dawn is a big-budget sandbox game that, despite some story cliches, manages to tell a compelling tale in a fantastically fleshed-out post-apocalyptic world. I've mentioned in a previous video that a lot of modern games that follow this design can get overwhelming with how many activities their maps are cluttered with. This is, of course, my opinion, and at this point, a frigid take on the open-world genre. Despite my feelings about them, I like to keep an open mind and try to focus on the stories that these games tell. I actually really liked Horizon Zero Dawn, and I respect the massive amount of work that goes into making a title like this. So we'll start with that aspect. The Netherlands-based studio Guerrilla Games had previous success with their Sony-exclusive Killzone series. After their 5th entry in the series, a sort of franchise burnout was being felt by the studio, so they decided to go in a new direction for their next IP, one with a more colorful palette and less gritty tone. In 2010, management at Guerrilla asked all of their employees for game pitches, one of which stood out at the time. The studio's art director, J.B. Van Beek, had a concept for a young tribal woman in the distant future, striving to learn about the origins of her world after the fall of modern civilization. Unfortunately, another studio at the time had been working on Enslaved, a post-apocalyptic action RPG featuring a red-haired female protagonist and mechanized creatures. Not wanting to be seen as copycats, Guerrilla shelved the project temporarily and began work on another pitch. The other game idea was a steampunk shooter dealing with magic and fantastical beasts. Horizon was not forgotten, however, and they asked a large group of Sony executives to compare the two game ideas and raise their hands in favor of one or the other. Horizon won the allure of the crowd. Without experience making an open-world game, Guerrilla decided to develop Killzone Shadowfall and Horizon Zero Dawn simultaneously in order to give themselves both an easy win as far as game sales with a tried-and-true franchise, and to test out certain mechanics to be featured in their new IP. The challenges of creating a game for the soon-to-be-released PlayStation 4 added to the list of hurdles the team would face. Being that the Killzone series writing was always contracted out of house, Guerrilla needed to add narrative and quest directors, two unfamiliar components to their team. John Gonzalez, lead writer for Fallout New Vegas, and David Ford, a quest designer for EverQuest and the Elder Scrolls Online, were hired to aid the studio in this new endeavor of open-world design. A technique for rendering the environments called frustum culling was used to enable the player to traverse the open world without relying on loading screens to draw the detailed surroundings while keeping memory usage in check. This system basically de-renders anything outside of the player's lines of sight and reloads them as the camera pans around. An ingenious technique that Guerrilla decided to share with Hideo Kojima, literally handing him Horizon Zero Dawn's source code as a gift to use in his game Death Stranding. At last, in February 2017, the game released for PlayStation 4 and then was ported to Windows in 2020. There are 3 different main quest lines, but one of them focuses solely on Aloy's journey, so we'll just be following that one. Here's the time code to avoid spoilers. The story begins with a 6-year-old outcast named Aloy, watching as a group of children gather berries for their tribe called the Nora. She tries to participate, but the Nora mother advises the other kids that as an outcast, Aloy is to be shunned. She runs away frustrated and falls into a cavern. She calls out to her guardian Rost, but to no avail, so young Aloy makes her way deeper into the cave. She comes across a ruin of the metal world, remnants of an ancient civilization. On a corpse, she finds a metal trinket attached to its ear. When worn, the device generates a sphere of augmented reality that allows Aloy to interact with the metal world technology. Further inside the ruin, she notices another corpse with the same device attached that plays a holographic message of a father wishing his son a happy birthday.
Daddy sure does love his little big man. Look, Daddy can't be there with you and Mom, but we can still have a party, right? Sure we can.
Show me. Show me again.
Aloy hears Rost call out to her, and he pulls her out of the cave, warning her that anything involved with the metal world is dangerous. Rost decides it's time to train the girl to hunt and survive in the wild. Along the way, they see a tribe member named Teb parkouring around a cliffside on what are known as brave trails. Rost insists Aloy ignore him, as the two of them are outcasts. He advises our young heroine on the importance of stealth and deception in the hunt, noting that herds of machines can communicate with each other if they spot danger nearby. They sneak up to a group of striders, where Aloy's device allows her to scan for weak points on the machine's anatomies. After a successful kill, the two of them hear screaming in the distance. They find Teb again, who loses his grip while rock climbing, falling to the ground amongst another herd of striders and watchers. Aloy's device shows her the paths that the Watchers patrol, allowing her to sneak past them and rescue Teb. He is clearly grateful for the help, but Teb's father approaches, chastising him for speaking to Rost and motherless Aloy, as it is tribal law that outcasts are not to be spoken to. Frustrated by the encounter, Aloy heads back home by herself. Suddenly, she is struck in the head by a rock thrown by one of the berry-picking boys named Bast. He tells her to stay away, throwing another rock at her, but she catches it this time. Rost tends to her wound, and Aloy asks him why she is an outcast and who her mother was.
Why am I an outcast?
Aloy, this is not the time.
Who was my mother?
Aloy, I've told you before, that's not for us to know. You were just a newborn when the matriarchs brought you to me.
So the matriarchs, they know?
It's not so simple.
In order for Aloy to get answers from the matriarchs, she must compete in the Proving, a rite of passage for tribe members to become braves, the winner of which is granted whatever they want. We see the years pass in a training montage, where Rost hones her skills for the competition.
And show us a passage of time. We're gonna need a montage.
On a snowy morning 2 days prior to the Proving, Rost has one final lesson to teach Aloy. He sends her down to the Embrace to harvest fire arrow parts from machines. While running this errand, she goes to a man named Karst to purchase a tripcaster, a device that allows its user to place wire traps on the ground. After meeting up with Rost again, the pair leave the relative safety of the Embrace, following a trail of destruction laid by hostile machines. Rost has brought Aloy here to give her the challenge of bringing down a sawtooth, a new and highly dangerous species of machine. She succeeds in killing the beast, but Rost's lesson was not in the action itself, rather in the consequences of that action. By eliminating the threat, Aloy has prevented the deaths of other future tribe members, an important consideration in her new life after the Proving. A day passes, and Rost meets Aloy at Mother's Heart, the village where the Proving is to take place. He says his final goodbyes to Aloy with a necklace, pleading with her not to visit him after the rite of passage, implying he will disappear once it is complete, and Aloy a full-fledged member of the Nora. High Matriarch Tirsa greets Aloy at the gates to the village, welcoming her to the festival and insisting she meet an old friend there. The old friend is Teb, who has stitched Aloy a Nora Brave outfit as thanks for saving his life years ago. He tells tells her to head to the Matriarch's Lodge, where an envoy of rival Karja tribesmen are meeting the Nora leaders. The common folk are outraged by the Karja's appearance in the village, but one of the diplomats named Aaron calms the crowd. He reassures them the new Sun King is ashamed of his father's atrocities against the various tribes of the region, and as a result killed him. Among the members of the crowd, Aloy spots the only other person she's ever seen wearing what she calls a focus, the gadget that allows her to scan her environments. The man's name is Olin, a friend of Aaron's. Before Aloy can ask Olin about his focus, he quickly departs after an apparent malfunction with the device. She joins her other proving competitors where they light floating lanterns made by their respective mothers. Aloy dedicates her lantern to Rost.
What is the child but a mother's hope that takes flight? A glowing flame that climbs the air, set free to the wind, sailing the sky till it fades and falls. So, from one to another, passes the chain of love.
At the Hunter's Lodge, Aloy is harassed by a guard named Resh and her childhood nemesis Bast, who conjures up his best interpretation of a Disney Channel bully.
I see you've still got a scar from where that rock I threw hit you. Now that's a cherished memory.
I'd watch it if I were you. Is that a threat? Could be. See you around. Oh, I'll be around.
The following morning, the proving begins. Aloy wins the race by taking a riskier path than the others down an abandoned Brave trail. A group of masked cultists ambush the Braves, killing nearly all in attendance, but Aloy fights back. Once the dust has settled, Aloy finds another focus on one of the cultists' bodies, when she is suddenly confronted by their leader. Like a guardian angel, Rost attacks the bullet-bedazzled killer in time to save Aloy, but he is mortally wounded in the fight. The cult leader orders the evidence of their ambush destroyed as Rost pushes Aloy off of the cliff, saving her from the explosion. Moments later, Aloy awakens in the Sacred Mountain after being saved by members of the Nora tribe. She recovers her equipment and the focus taken from one of the cultists. On it, she sees the recorded message of the cult leader instructing some of his zealots to eliminate Aloy. An older woman resembling Aloy is seen in the recording with a near identical DNA profile.
Are you my mother? Why try to kill me just because I look like you?
Matriarch Tirsa brings her to the sealed door inside of the Sacred Mountain and tells her she was not born of a woman, rather of the mountain itself. Aloy was found in the chamber as an infant, either a gift from the Allmother or a curse. As she approaches the door, Aloy is scanned, but her identity cannot be confirmed due to corrupted registry data. Tirsa tells Aloy that a war party sent to find the killers after the massacre were overwhelmed in battle, in part by the cultists' ability to exert control over machines. Along with Matriarch Jezza, Tirsa anoints Aloy as a seeker of the Nora, granting her passage to Meridian in search of Olin. A new machine is witnessed infecting other machines that then besiege the settlement. Once the demon is killed, Aloy recovers the specific component responsible for the machine's corrupting influence and attaches it to her spear. The override device grants Aloy complete control over any machine she possesses the codes for. One of the guards named Varl points her towards a settlement to the north called Mother's Crown as her first step on the journey to Meridian. Maria is found in the village and directs Aloy to a Karja fort to the west, sealed off from the infected machines now roaming the wilds. After clearing out the corruption zones, Aloy proceeds to the Karja capital, where she finds Erend as Meridian's new captain of the Vanguard. She tells Erend she needs to find his trusted friend Olin, who has been working with the cultists. Erend reluctantly brings Aloy to Olin's apartment, where the two of them find a message from the cultists. Olin was coerced into helping them by their capturing and threatening his family. A map on his wall reveals places Olin had previously visited, giving Aloy a lead on his location. At a large excavation site, Olin is found with one of the cult leaders, where the ancient corruptor machines were originally discovered, buried deep underground and reawakened by the group. An unknown person calls Aloy on her focus, who has disabled communications for the cultists. Aloy kills the members present as well as their machines and confronts Olin. The Eclipse are led by a man named Helis, Aloy's attacker at the Proving, and worship a talking machine known as Hades. They are a sect of the Shadow Karja, a group of the late Mad Sun King's loyalists exiled from Meridian after his assassination, who are set on retaking the capital. The corrupted machines are being used as part of their efforts to win their civil war. Olin tells Aloy the image of her older doppelganger was recorded in the Metal World ruins located at Maker's End. Aloy spares Olin's life and tells him to get his priorities straight.
You're sparing me? After all I've done?
Yes. Forge a new life, Olin. One of better make.
Then the rest of my life will be lived in your debt.
She infiltrates the ruins, which are guarded by cultists, who have taken control of an enormous war machine called a Deathbringer. Further inside, Aloy is scanned by a door identical to the one at the Sacred Mountain. Her identity is confirmed as that of a Dr. Sobek, and she is allowed access. Dr. Elizabeth Sobek had been scheduled to meet one Ted Faro in his office on the top floor, so Aloy makes her way up. There she finds recordings of the meetings between the two. Faro, despite being a professional enemy, called Dr. Sobek for help solving a problem with his weaponized robots. A glitch released control of the machines, who then began self-replicating and consuming biomass for fuel. The unchecked reproduction of these new invasive species would eventually result in the extinction of all life on Earth. Faro requested Sobek be his advisor on containing the swarm. She proposed a plan codenamed Project Zero Dawn to prevent the inevitable apocalypse. The final recording is of Dr. Sobek in transit to the U.S. Robot Command, threatening to expose Faro for the glitch's origin if he doesn't agree to fund the project.
Look on the bright side, Ted. From here on out, you get to do what you've always been good at. Footing the bill while others get their hands dirty.
God forgive me.
Aloy is unsatisfied with her findings and lack of answers regarding her mother. The unknown caller presents himself after chastising Aloy for not appreciating the gravity of the information they just learned.
And in minutes, you uncover more ancient knowledge than I have in a lifetime, and what you want to know is my name. Silence. That's my name. Now, why don't you try asking another question? Something less trivial.
Silence had been working on piecing together the story behind the destruction of the old world, and with Aloy's help was able to gather evidence otherwise impossible for him to reach. Through their connected interests, Aloy and Silence are locked into an uneasy alliance. Going off of the last recording, Aloy heads to U.S. Robot Command that Silence leads her to. At the site, known as the Grave Horde, the Eclipse are found scavenging among the ruins. In one of the chambers, Aloy comes across a recording of Dr. Sobek meeting with General Harris and various military commanders. Elizabeth warns the panel that anything automated will be hacked by the swarm, thus only human forces can combat the machines in order to buy time for Project Zero Dawn to be completed. The enlistment of all able-bodied citizens was necessary to defend the orbital launch base that Zero Dawn was constructed in. Silence informs Aloy that the base is located directly underneath the Citadel, the capital of the Shadow Karja, populated by a number of Eclipse agents. Any Eclipse wearing a focus could notify Hades of Aloy's presence, so taking down the communications network will be necessary to safely access the base. At the Eclipse's headquarters, Aloy destroys the Tall Neck, where the focus network signal originates. In order to infiltrate the Citadel, Aloy poses as a mercenary for hire. She sneaks down a cliffside near the throne room to an entrance into the launch base where Silence had been previously. To open the door to Zero Dawn, an emergency vent is activated to clear a blockage that alerts the Shadow Karja to a presence inside the facility. In a theater, a message from General Harris plays. It was concluded that the extinction of all organic life on the planet was inevitable, and that General Harris's Operation Enduring Freedom was a lost cause designed to give the remainder of civilians the false hope that they might survive. A final desperate defense against the machines until Zero Dawn's completion. Elizabeth's design included the creation of an automated terraforming system named Gaia, an AI designed to control the various components of Zero Dawn. One of Gaia's objectives would be to generate deactivation codes and build antennae to broadcast them, shutting down all of the machines. In Sobek's office, Aloy finds the Alpha Registry used to gain access to the locked door at the womb of the Allmother. Before she can escape, Aloy is captured by Helis. Helis releases Aloy into the Colosseum as a sacrifice, but she recovers her equipment and kills the behemoth. Cornered by two corruptors, Aloy's fate seems grim when Silence bursts into the scene with several machines at his side. The two ride out to a safe location, and Silence hands Aloy a new focus. He tells her he needs to make some important preparations and therefore can't help her save the Nora from the eclipse. Back in the Embrace, Nora lands have been ravaged by the cultists and their machines. The last of the Braves are found at the entrance to the Sacred Mountain, who help Aloy take down a Thunderjaw. By restoring the Alpha Registry, Aloy is granted access through the Great Door. She finds evidence of a facility that raised other humans using android wardens called Sentinels, that the young ones were parented by. The humans housed there were eventually released from the facility once the food stores had run out. Apollo, the information hub storing all of mankind's knowledge to be used to educate the future human race, had been taken offline. Hades tried to overtake Gaia, leading her to destroy the main reactor in an effort to kill Hades. Without control over the terraforming procedures, Gaia predicts disastrous results in the attempt to reseed the planet. Her plan was to essentially rebirth Dr. Sobek in the form of a clone raised by the tribes outside of the complex. With the matching genetic profile of Sobek, the clone could access all facilities in the area and reset the program. Hades released itself and the other components of Zero Dawn from control of Gaia. She instructs Dr. Sobek to find the master override at Gaia Prime in order to purge Hades and safely reboot the program.
So, you're even more extraordinary than I thought.
I never had a mother.
What are you talking about? You had two, a dead woman and a machine.
I'm not a person. I'm an instrument. Manufactured by a machine. Born in destruction and fire.
To quench the flames and heal the world. How tragic to learn you're a person of towering importance. It seems you have a destiny to fulfill. So when you're done feeling sorry for yourself, go to the bitter climb. I'll be waiting above in Gaia Prime's ruins.
Aloy travels to the destroyed ruins of Gaia Prime, climbing her way into the complex. Silence has a workshop set up at the hatch where he had previously attempted to enter. A recording details an energy signature leak at one of the sealed doors leading into Gaia Prime, which alerted the swarm. Dr. Sobek sacrificed herself to repair the door, ensuring the safety of the program and the lives of those housed in the complex. In an airtight sealed chamber, Aloy discovers a round table of corpses belonging to the Alphas, or top scientists working on the Zero Dawn project. Ted Faro had purged the Apollo system, erasing all of human history and knowledge. He then trapped the Alphas inside the chamber and suffocated them. Aloy finds the master override on the round table, and back at the entrance, Silence awaits in his workshop. He admits to Aloy he had originally discovered Hades and served it in exchange for great knowledge. Silence helped create the Eclipse to do the bidding of Hades. As a last gesture, Silence gives Aloy his lance to attach the master override to. Aloy travels to Meridian to warn the Sun King of the Eclipse's imminent attack on the city and the importance of the Spire. The following day, the great battle begins as Aloy helps defend the city from an army of machines. She faces off with Helis, at last killing the warlord and exacting justice for his countless murders.
You pity me?
Turn your face to the sun.
Aloy then fights her way to the Spire and Hades, where she stabs the Master Override into it, purging the Extinction Protocol and saving the world. She finds Dr. Sobek's body in the wilds, at last reunited with her mother. In a post-credits scene, we see Silence recapturing Hades' essence. So the TLDR is that Aloy is the clone of the person responsible for developing the Zero Dawn project, meant to repopulate the planet with organic life after a rogue army of self-replicating machines devoured all the biomass on it. Only she can access the facility housing the program that can erase the psychotic AI who wants to undo the project and kill everyone. A classic Chosen One story that describes the events events, the world, and the lore exhaustively well. There are a ton of codex entries and audio logs that go into even further detail if that interests you. The other two main quest lines consist of getting revenge on the Eclipse for the Nora and solving the mystery of Aaron's sister's disappearance. As an audience, we are given a sympathetic view of the world, with Aloy's outcast status allowing us to learn with her the cultures and history of the new human race. I've mentioned in a previous video that this is an effective way to write a main character in a sci-fi or fantasy world in order to keep the audience engaged. We're allowed narratively to experience the events vicariously and superimpose ourselves onto the character without being lost in all the new terminology presented in the fictional universe. The themes of this tale are formulaic. Man's blind ambition for power will be the downfall of civilization and can only be countered by motherly love. Horizon Zero Dawn's premise is nothing new, but it is executed in a compelling manner through Aloy's personal journey to find her mother. I've read criticisms that Aloy as a character is fairly bland and uncharismatic. To a certain extent, I agree with that. She does come off as empty behind the eyes considering some of the horrible situations she comes out of without shedding a single tear or losing her temper. Now, I can respect that kind of level-headedness in the face of mortal conflict, but I don't think it usually comes without heavy doses of mood-altering drugs or the kind of bloodlust indoctrination that goes with military training. On the other hand, she was rigorously trained by Rost for over a decade in her quest to become a brave, so who knows what kind of effect that had on her psyche. Let's move on to presentation. Every frame a painting. That is a sufficient description of the visuals in this game. Find me someone who says HZD looks bad and you found someone who very well may have vision problems. Skin pores, eyeball reflections, rain droplets, all very impressive stuff. Look at these ants climbing up a tree. That's nuts. I managed to play the game on ultra settings with very few dips in frame rate, even while recording using the PC specs detailed on my About page. The recommended specs on the Steam page say you'll want a 3.5 GHz processor, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 6 GB video card. I've seen desktop builds with this kind of gear included for on average about $700 to $800. But this being a previous PS4 exclusive, you can save a bunch of money by just playing it on console. I appreciate Sony's ports to PC and I hope they continue. There were some small visual issues I came across. For example, what I can only describe as twitchy facial animations came up on a number of occasions. The lip syncing is pretty much perfect, but sometimes you'll see stuff like this. I guess the eye tracking was done in a weird way. I noticed objects and textures pop in a couple of times at the edge of draw distance, but not consistently enough for it to be distracting. At no point when wandering the open world did any two places feel samey. The rich, colorful diversity of landscapes in Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah are recreated with striking resemblance to their real-life counterparts. You needn't look further than Meridian to see how detailed the world is in this engine. This is one of the best cityscapes I've seen in any game. An architect was included in the credits, so that explains the quality of the buildings. Now, you've probably noticed the abundance of lens flares. I don't necessarily mind lens flares, but these are so pronounced they make it difficult to see sometimes. Particularly at night during combat, things eventually became a blinding blur of lights. This doesn't help when the combat is already fairly difficult. Getting back to the positives, weather effects like rain, snow, or dust are very realistic. The character designs clearly had a lot of thought put into them. Every character has intricate tapestries of details in their looks, from head to toe. Their hairstyles, jewelry, clothing, weapons, everything about their appearances reflects their relative cultural backgrounds. At this point, you get the picture. The game looks amazing. So let's talk about gameplay. The gameplay loop consists of travel, exploration, map revealing, stealth combat, crafting and collection, and questing. Traversing the map is made easier by overriding certain machines and riding them as mounts, or by fast traveling to previously unlocked campfires. Fortunately, there are plenty of checkpoints throughout the world, so you don't have to spend too much time walking around if you don't want to. With the amount of collectibles and important components to be found between destinations, more often than not, I found myself traveling by foot. Different locations contain different types of machines, overriding which depends on what override codes you have gathered from underground cauldrons. The cauldrons are roughly 20-minute long dungeons featuring boss fights at the end. Map revealing comes in the form of climbing and overriding tall necks, which subverts the whole tower climbing mechanic so ubiquitous in open world games by making you find a high enough place to jump onto the moving beasts. Since Aloy's health bar doesn't regenerate and machines tend to do a lot of damage, collection of health related ingredients is essential. Having enough arrows, traps, and potions available in your inventory is crucial as well, so this adds to the necessity of hunting both the natural wildlife as well as machines. Open combat is definitely challenging, so hunting by stealth and and use of traps is the way to go. The bow and spear never feel overpowered at any point, requiring the player to exploit weak points on machines and or utilize traps. By scanning enemies, their weak points will be highlighted, as well as their weaknesses to elemental effects like electricity or fire. Careful thought and precision goes into combat, which is aided by abilities unlocked in the skill tree. Questing rewards experience, which levels you up, granting skill points. All the unlockable skills are fairly important and can make a big difference in the ease at which you're able to handle different scenarios. This isn't an RPG in the sense that you can build a certain class of character through these skills, since all of them are very bread and butter mechanics, like the ability to stealth kill bandit leaders or repair your mounts. Certain animal hides allow you to upgrade your bag limits, a la Far Cry 3. Currency comes in the form of metal shards, which are found on slain enemies and various containers hidden throughout the map. While shards are plentiful enough if you put in the work, they are also used in crafting, so you'll find yourself needing to scavenge quite a bit. Collecting trinkets like metal flowers and Banuk figurines allows for rewards in Meridian. Aloy's focus comes with an investigative mechanic called Witcher Sense. Look, that's just what it's called. I think we can all agree on that. Many quests will have you scanning for clues and following footprints or blood trails to solve little mysteries. I say solve, but really you just follow a breadcrumb trail to the end and Aloy pieces it all together without much player involvement in the solution. Realistically, if you want a comparison to Horizon Zero Dawn as far as gameplay, look to Assassin's Creed. For me, it got too grindy and repetitive. It started to feel like a chore after a while. Most of my interest was kept through the story missions, but even those started feeling pretty similar to each other. Go to place, stealth combat, watch recordings, rinse and repeat. That's my thoughts on the gameplay. We'll move on to sound design now. Audio-wise, HZD is decent, but loud. Well, I should say very quiet, then very loud. It's a weird mix, with the non-combat gameplay being a nice normal volume, and the combat being extremely loud, even turned down. This was a bit irritating because it kept me turning the volume up and down fairly often, which took me out of the experience. The voice cast does a fine job with the dialogue, but nothing Oscar-worthy. That may be the fault of the writing, however. All the characters are lacking in emotional range. A bit of a waste for such a stellar cast. Ashley Birch from Life is Strange, Lance Reddick from The Wire, J.B. Blanc from Everything. They even brought Geralt of Rivia and the sole survivor from Fallout 4 into the mix for some of the random NPCs.
I'm considering what I'll fashion next at the forge.
Night's coming. More bad dreams. Here comes another restless night.
Interesting. The soundtrack is definitely above average. Written by Joris de Man, The Flight, Niels Vanderleest, and Jonathan Williams. Some interesting techniques were used in the compositions, like a bow on piano wire or guitar picks on cellos. I'm pretty sure I even heard a hurdy-gurdy in there somewhere. If you want to know what tinnitus sounds like, here it is. Just why? I actually do have mild tinnitus, so this tripped me out every time I heard it. Game composers, can we not have this sound effect in our soundtracks? Please and thank you. Aside from some boring dialogue and weird mixing, it's an overall okay sound design. To conclude, if I could compare Horizon Zero Dawn to a movie, it would be something like The Avengers. Both competently made by hundreds of talented people. Both very sleek and solidly written, but nothing that will leave you with any particular taste in your mouth, other than popcorn maybe. That's not to say it's in any way uninteresting or unfun. I highly recommend this game if open world sandbox games are your speed. Tons of eye candy, an engaging story, dozens of hours of content, and a well fleshed out world. Horizon Zero Dawn is truly a blockbuster experience. There are a lot of haters of this genre of game, and I can somewhat relate, but considering the quality of Horizon Zero Dawn, I think it would make any of them reconsider their views. My parting words for today are keep an open mind. The old cliche, don't judge a book by its cover, is a timeless platitude that may be more relevant than ever considering the deceptive visual nature of social media. You may think some genre of film or music doesn't vibe with you, but there are always exceptions to be found.